It was supposed to be the decade that never ended. The music still plays. The neon still glows. The movies still roll on VHS tapes in basements and memory. But now something feels different. Something has shifted. A silence has entered the room where laughter once echoed through the tube TVs and boombox speakers of a generation that lived for the moment and dressed like tomorrow might never come. Because in rapid succession, we lost them. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, Ozzy Osbourne, Hulk Hogan, gone. The names don't just roll off the tongue, they roar. They were titans. They weren't just on our TVs. They were the TVs. The very pixels burned with their energy, their charm, their madness, and their unapologetic color. They were the decade of decadence. They were its lifeblood. And now, in the passing of three icons, Generation X feels that time, their time, is slowly turning the lights off on the wildest party ever thrown. To lose Warner was to lose the grounding force of cool, collected wisdom from The Cosby Show, the one who taught us you could be young, black, intellectual, and proud. To lose Ozzy was to silence the dark wizard of heavy metal, the prince of darkness who turned madness into music, who gave fear a rhythm and rebellion a guitar riff. To lose Hogan was to see the last flex of an arm that once told the whole world to say their prayers, eat their vitamins, and believe in the power of the human spirit, and of course, Hulkamania. These weren't just celebrities. These were myth makers. We grew up on their words, their songs, their victories. We became who we are because of them. And now we mourn, not just them, but what they represented. Because the 1980s weren't just a decade. They were a revolution wrapped in denim and drenched in synthesizer. Chris Clues, a man who has studied this era like an archaeologist studies ancient civilizations, says it plainly: the 80s were the pop culture decade. And he's right. It was a decade where boundaries were pushed, where fashion screamed, and where people weren't just allowed to be weird, they were celebrated for it. The 80s didn't ask permission. It kicked down the door with leg warmers, lit up the dance floor with strobe lights, and yelled from the rooftops in shoulder pads and fingerless gloves. It was the era of experimentation, and not just in music or film, but in identity. People were finally allowed to be who they were. And not only allowed, they were cheered for it. There was freedom in the air, and creativity in the water. MTV wasn't just a channel. It was a cultural awakening. A revolution of style, sound, and attitude. You didn't need to fit in. You needed to stand out. Madonna didn't just sing, she declared. Michael Jackson didn't just dance. He moonwalked into legend. Prince wasn't just a performer. He was a movement in purple. And surrounding them, wrapping their arms around that chaos, were characters like Warner, like Ozzy, like Hogan. Each one carving out a lane that didn't exist before them. Think back. Think to the posters on your wall. Think to the cassette tapes in your Walkman. Think to the Saturday mornings, the Friday night movies, the mall arcades, the Pepsi commercials, the Transformers, the hair, the leather, the attitude. Think to who you were in that decade. That person didn't die with the calendar flip. That person still lives in you. But with these icons gone, the tether to that era grows thinner. And that's what hurts. It's like the glitter is slowly being swept off the floor after the party. The disco ball still spins, but there's no one left to dance beneath it. Yet even as we grieve, we remember. We remember what it felt like to believe in heroes. Hogan wasn't just a wrestler. He was a mythical being. A comic book come to life. You watched him and believed that maybe, just maybe, good could win. Warner wasn't just a sidekick. He was the quiet heart of a show that defined family for millions. He gave us calm in the chaos. A cool head in a whirlwind world. And Ozzy, God, Ozzy, wasn't just music. He was the madness. He was every teen's secret rebellion, blaring in headphones on the school bus, reminding us that weird was wonderful. They lived loudly. They lived fully. They defined what it meant to be unapologetically alive. So now, as the world feels a bit dimmer, we cling to the echoes. We play the songs. We quote the lines. We remember the matches. We wear the neon. Because the 1980s never really ended. Not in our minds. Not in our hearts. Chris Clues reminds us that the decade was a glitter bomb of awesome insanity and larger-than-life characters. Yes, because no one whispered in the 80s. No one blended in. It was all big. Big hair. Big dreams. Big mistakes. Big love. And with each of these legends lost, we're reminded just how big that decade really was. The 80s were the last time the world felt fun without irony. Joy without cynicism. Drama without digital filters. It was all real. And that's why it hurts so much to lose them now. Because they didn't just pass away. They took a piece of our childhoods with them. They took Saturday mornings and muscle poses. They took flying doves and devil horns. They took laughter that came through CRT screens. But they also left us something. They left us with lessons. With memories. With a blueprint for how to live loud. Be bold. Be weird. Be yourself, without apology. That was the gospel of the 80s. So yes, maybe the glitter fades. Maybe the cassette tapes wear out. Maybe the posters curl at the edges. But the feeling, that fire, that spark, that never dies. Because once you've danced under the neon, once you've screamed the lyrics, once you've believed in heroes with handlebar mustaches and bats on their album covers, you never go back to black and white. The 80s weren't just a moment. They were a movement. And while some of its generals may have fallen, the army marches on, in us. Raise your boombox. Wear the denim jacket. Quote the movies. Play the records. Let the spirit of that decade live in every part of who you are. Because though the world has